The Joe Rogan Experience.
If there's a Mount Rushmore of video games, you're George Washington. You're up there.
So this is great. People have been kind of nudging us for years and years to get this done. So it's great that we're finally able to make it happen.
Yeah, I have been from day one a gigantic Quake junkie and a Doom junkie. So for me to have you in here is a giant treat. And everybody, I've talked about your video games and your creations so many times on this podcast. So it's very cool to have you here. And thank you very much for showing me, before the podcast got started, I should tell everybody, you showed me the latest and greatest version of Oculus Rift, which is amazing. It's so small. For people watching the YouTube, this is the entire unit. This thing that sits on your head, it's very light. And it's not attached to a computer. Like, you don't have to carry anything around. There's no extra. Everything is in here.
Yeah, so this is the Oculus Quest, the standalone device. And it's been kind of the culmination of a bunch of different products that we've been working on. And it's the vision that we had even 6 years ago, just the idea of not connected to anything. You put this magic hat on and you're transported to these different worlds. And
this is available right now. Anyone can buy this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's available. Jamie just actually pulled up the website. Can I push this up to you? Pull that. Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
What is the battery life on these things?
So it depends on what you're doing. Where if you just sit there and watch Netflix, it'll last a little more than 3 hours. If you play some of the really hardcore games, it might only last 2 hours or so.
Do you have numbers on how many people are watching Netflix on this thing?
So our previous one right before this, the Oculus Go, was a little bit more media focused, and that's one of our more popular applications. I mean, surprisingly, everybody thought that VR was going to be all about these just amazing gaming experiences, but some of the most popular experiences are doing reasonably conventional things, watching Netflix, watching YouTube, Amazon Prime, stuff like that, where if you're you and you've got a great home theater and everything, there's not this much benefit to having a theater like that in VR. But if you're in a situation like you're in a tiny room in Tokyo or something, the idea of being able to put on the VR headset and have this lovely ski lodge atmosphere with a giant screen TV, it has some real benefits. So in the end, VR should be a replacement for anything you do on screens today, whether it's your phone, your tablet, your TV, your laptop, your PC. All of these should eventually be superseded by just having more flexible screens in VR. I mean, we have lots of challenges now with resolution and comfort for long-term use, but this is the direction that everything's going. Not only do you have things in VR that you couldn't do anywhere else, just experiences that you can't have with that level of immersion, but it should pull along every other thing that people do with screens devices today.
I didn't consider television shows, but of course people would be watching Netflix on this if it's possible. Have you done the Disney World ride, the Avatar ride, Flights of Passage?
No, I haven't done that yet.
It's amazing. You sit on this, it's like a motorcycle looking thing. It straps you in place, and it's supposed to represent one of those flying dragon things in Avatar. And then you have the headset, you put that on, and the virtual reality experience is second to none. I mean, it's incredible. Super high resolution, and the motorcycle's moving around. You get wind and smells and all these sensory.
Yeah, so that's one of the really interesting things. Like, I think about that whenever I am at amusement parks for things like the Harry Potter rides and stuff like that, where they're doing lots with screens and motion platforms where I think about it from the VR perspective, and anything we're doing visually and audibly, we could go ahead and do a great job in the headset. So it's cutting it down to these few physical things that you can't do. So you've got things with motion platforms that actually jostle you around that you can't do in VR. You've got things like smell and like the Void, where they have the Star Wars experience there. We have a fantastic Star Wars experience on Quest, which in many ways has a lot of that magic. But in the Void, where they set it up and they blow hot air over what's the virtual lava towards you, that's something that you still don't get. But it's kind of like the age-old battle of what can you do differently in an arcade that you can't do as good in your home system. And VR now lets you do all of these amazing things there. But if you're willing to spend millions of dollars and build a theme park attraction, essentially, you can still throw some of these extra things in. People joke about when is Smellivision coming to VR, and there have actually been real companies that have spun up to say it's like, well, we want to do scent augmentation, but it's not a great thing. And those are still the last vestiges of things where you have to go someplace. But the promise of VR is to, the world as you want it, not having to go to someplace to do something magical. And if you can get to 90-something% of that experience staying in your own room, then that's great.
What would they be able to do with Smellivision? Would you have like a standalone unit that like has access to the program? So like if you were flying over orange fields, it would spray citrus in the air, sort of like soaring over the world. Have you ever done that Disneyland ride?
Yeah. So somebody literally did make this where they made a little box that put that glued or attached to the underside of the head-mounted display. And one of the interesting things about scent, as opposed to like audio or video, with video everybody knows that you just make red, green, and blue colors. You can mix them in any way and make all the colors that we can see. Smell isn't like that. Our nose is actually a receptor for a whole lot of discrete different molecules. There's no way to mix up smell like the way we do with light to make red, green, and blue primaries with that. So they really had to pick, okay, here's the dozen or so smells that we're going to have with this. And it would just sort of spritz it out on a little blast of air very close to your nose, so it doesn't need much of it to get in.
So if you really wanted to do some sort of a jungle experience with, thousands of different smells of plants and dirt and all you would have to have like some enormous unit that's spraying these various things. Yeah,
although I suspect that at least modern people in modern society do not really have that discerning of a level of scent. Like if you took some Peruvian indigene or something, that they probably would complain. It's like, oh, the fidelity on this is garbage. I should have 500 different smells here and I only detect 5.
Right.
But you take, a normal city person and you just 3 cents of jungle is probably going to be more than enough to sell the experience.
Yeah, the guy in the jungle will be like, this is sterile urine. Yeah. This is not real. So what is this, Jamie?
That's it. Well, my goodness. I guess.
Oh my goodness.
One of them.
So this is something she's holding?
No, she's pulled it off. It attaches to the headset right here.
It says feel real.
Yeah.
Sensory mask. So it's a sensory mask that smell virtual reality. Oh yeah. It simulates hundreds of smells to immerse you in the virtual world. Wow. Of course it's coming. But why am I shocked? Look at this guy. He's got like a little cartridge. Just pop it in there. With all
it's like refilling your toner cartridge on your ink.
Wow. Reliable scent generator. How hilarious.
But yes, if you have to rank your senses, that's not in the top 2.
Yeah, and it's probably going to be clunky like the earlier versions of VR where you got that low resolution sort of thing. I remember my friend Duncan, he's a huge technology freak, and he had a really early version of the consumer virtual reality headsets, the early Oculus. And I remember putting it on going, oh my God, even though it was really pixelated, I'm like, this is a game changer. Like
that sense that you've seen the future.
Yeah.
You put it on, it's like it's not here yet, but that's the ability to just project a little bit past the flaws there and say, okay, well, we're going to sort this out. Over the next several years, we'll get higher resolution, we'll get the response better, and you can imagine what it's going to be.
Yeah, it's pretty stunning. And what you just showed me today, the Star Wars one, is actually higher resolution than the Void, which is the one that you pay to go see, or that you go into the warehouse and everything. I've done that several times. The Void with Star Wars and then the Void with Wreck-It Ralph, which is pretty cool too. It's really fun.
Yeah, but the physicality of having the actual props there is the magic of being in there. It's like you pull out your Stormtrooper blaster and you heft it around, and that's really something versus a lot of times when you're just using the controllers to pretend you're doing things, you feel like you're a mime someplace, some French mime kind of pretending to do things, and that doesn't sell the experience. And that's why, my favorites are the things like Beat Saber, where in the game you are swinging this lightsaber sort of thing through things. So your actions in reality are exactly what your actions in the virtual world are. You swing through it. There's a little bit of a buzz as you cross through it, and it just feels like you're projecting yourself there.